What's going on, guys? So I know many of you have been waiting for the M4 Pro versus M4 MacBook Pro 14-inch, and you've probably watched a ton of videos by now, and I've actually come to a conclusion that I've never come to before when reviewing MacBook laptops, which is why you should not buy the M4 Pro even if you upgrade the base model to around the same price of $2,000. Now, I understand I'm going against the grain here, but I want you to hear me out because I'm talking to the regular consumer who is probably conflicted on which laptop to get, since to some degree they are close in price. I'm going to talk about performance, of course, but probably in a way you've never heard of before. You know who else you haven't heard of before? Our sponsor, nobody. So let's get right into it. So for things that are similar, I'm going to gloss over real quick, but for differences, I'll stress what those differences are. First is the price. This machine here, the M4 in the US, starts at $1,600. This machine here is the M4 Pro in the US that starts at $2,000. Keep that in mind when I talk about the similarities and differences, because trust me, those differences might not warrant that $400 price difference. Now, the overall chassis is the same, so you get the same exact build quality whether you get the $2,000 model or the $1,600 model. That's the beauty of most Apple products. You get pretty good build quality for their more expensive models and their entry models like this one. The keyboard and trackpad are both the same. If we move on over to the camera, they both have center stage capability, 1080p webcam, 3 microphones that Apple says are studio quality. The speakers are basically identical. Now, one of the more important things that are very similar are the displays, which is crazy if you think about the price point. You're getting close to or even better than Apple's $5,000 Pro XDR display, since this can actually get 500 nits brighter in just regular SDR content. You get Pro Motion on both machines, so just scrolling and navigating through things feel overall smoother. The ports are something that may look similar and might be similar for most people depending on your use case. So the physical ports that we have 3 Thunderbolt ports in total, 2 on the left side with MagSafe and a headphone jack. And then on the other side, we still have another Thunderbolt port with an SD card slot and HDMI 2.1. But what's the actual difference? Because they all look the same when looking at the laptop. It's the Thunderbolt. And if you don't know what that is, it's the USB-C port. It's just a special USB-C port. The $1,600 model comes with Thunderbolt 4 and the $2,000 model comes with Thunderbolt 5. Now, while Thunderbolt 5 is phenomenal, if you don't know what Thunderbolt means, it doesn't matter whether it's 3, 4, 5, it's going to be useless for your use case. Is this the M4 Pro? No, this is the M4. Like I was saying earlier, it doesn't matter if it's Thunderbolt 3, 4, 5. If you don't know what Thunderbolt means, it's going to be useless to you, which I'll get into towards the end of the video. But objectively, just to let you guys know what Thunderbolt 5 is capable of. Thunderbolt 5 natively supports DisplayPort 2.1 and can support much faster external SSDs and external equipment that can be plugged in via Thunderbolt 5. But Thunderbolt 4 is actually pretty fast in its own right, and if you aren't limited or bottlenecked by the speeds of Thunderbolt 4, just keep using it. And before you play the card of, well, you might need Thunderbolt 5 in the future, or I'm probably going to use Thunderbolt 5 in the future, you're going to keep asking yourself that question constantly, and that's how you end up with an overkill machine that you barely use for its actual purpose for 5 years. Going back to the similarities, Apple Intelligence is on both, and they both start off with the same configuration of 512 gigabytes of storage. However, the RAM is where things start to get a little bit different, where there's 16 gigabytes on the M4 model, 24 that's starting on the M4 Pro model, and the upgrades can take you much further if you elect to go for the $2,000 M4 base model, M4 Pro base model. Sorry, these models are confusing. Now what you've been waiting for is the biggest difference, the performance. You get more CPU cores, more GPU cores, more memory bandwidth, and you're probably thinking to yourself, these all sound like justifiable things to pay an extra $400 for. But let me stop you right there. Single core performance is basically identical, even all the way up to the max, which starts at $3,200. I'll repeat that because some people might get lost in the benchmarks, but this $1,600 machine with M4 has the same single core performance as an M4 Max that starts at $3,200, double the price. Once again, the beauty of Apple products and just human engineering in general is creating great stuff for common people like you and me. you'll only start to realize the performance gains and applications that take advantage of those multi-cores. The thing is, single core performance is already so good that it's sometimes not even worth that extra gain of multi-core performance unless you actually need it, unless the things you're doing within those applications are very heavy. Here's just a broad general example. Let's say you come to the conclusion that you decide to pick up this Pro model over something like the MacBook Air. That's fine. The Pro has a better screen, better audio, better battery life, and stuff that is legitimate reasons to choose the Pro over the Air outside of things like performance. However, if you do just browsing the internet, a lot of the work that you do is in the browser, do a bit of photo, video, audio production, you will not notice a difference unless you are building some very, very heavy stuff. Heavy in the sense of if you're compiling big applications or creating a short film or movie with multiple upon multiple of 4K, 6K, 8K content, or mastering a soundtrack for a blockbuster movie or a Kendrick Lamar album, you will not notice a difference between M4, M4 Pro, and M4 Max if you are doing minimal things that I mentioned earlier. If you're doing those heavy things that I just mentioned, that's when you're going to start to notice the difference between the M4, M4 Pro, the Max chip, and eventually the Ultra chip whenever that drops. I hate to burst people's bubbles, but no, having 30 Chrome tabs, editing home videos and stuff that comes out of your iPhone that you do here and there does not mean that you are a pro user. You are a regular consumer. Even I'm a regular consumer. The extra memory bandwidth that is primarily only beneficial to local LLMs with all this AI craze, and I doubt most people are even hitting that 120 gigabits bandwidth on the base M4 in their everyday workload. Unless you're like some researcher running simulations that require large amounts of memory that needs to be processed, that's when you need to go over to the M4 Pro and higher chips. And what boggles my mind is that there are people on this platform telling you that you need the M4 Pro for editing YouTube videos and editing things that are in Photoshop, Affinity, Pixelmator Pro, things that are even optimized for Apple Silicon, when Apple's own website themselves tells you that workloads like the M4 Pro are things like manipulating gigapixel panoramas, compiling millions lines of code, or editing multiple streams of 8K video. I know people who don't even know what 4K means, and they are convincing themselves that they need the M4 Pro, or people working on a mobile application or web application convincing themselves they need an M4 Pro. No, you do not. You need the M4 with probably upgraded specs. That's it. Unless the company you are working for is paying for the M4 Pro machine, or you have a business where your profit eventually pays for the M4 Pro, you really don't need this machine. The M4 is plenty fast for you. Now, here's the next controversial take that disagrees with a lot of tech tubers, even my own opinions of the past. Yes, to the younger demographic, people are allowed to change their opinions. Not everything people say on the internet is set in stone. Anyway, the base M4 14-inch comes in at $1,600. Upgrading the memory and storage is $200 each. Most people say if you upgrade anything on the MacBook Pro, upgrade the RAM first, which is true. I don't disagree with that. But don't upgrade both, because at that point, you just sunk $400 into this product and you're now sitting at $2,000, which you can just get the M4 Pro, which people are saying just get the M4 Pro instead, which is where I would like to disagree with. Why? Because a lot of people, including myself, really don't need or will even use the power that comes what the M4 Pro offers. Now, I will admit Apple is stretching themselves in the market, especially in the storage space, with $200 per upgrade being absolutely insane. Tech-savvy people, including myself, will just say, buy an external hard drive. I'd argue if you upgrade the RAM and storage and are still at $2,000, because you want an internal storage of 1 terabyte and more RAM for handling multiple applications being open, which I would argue is way more important than just throwing more cores at your machine, don't buy the M4 Pro. Instead, buy it with the upgrades. Why? Because it's fundamentally a different machine. Sure, you have a more powerful computer, but you have less storage, and the performance you probably won't even scrape for the next 3 to 5 years. Now, as a person who drank the Kool-Aid and worked off external drives for like the past 2, 3 years, there are pros and cons. Like most things in life, there are trade-offs. There's actually nothing wrong with using external drives other than sometimes you might forget the cable, sometimes you might forget the drive itself, sometimes macOS won't read it, the speeds are significantly slower, and it'll just randomly disconnect, but at least you got that terabyte of storage for $100, which is great. For a tech-savvy person, I can keep up with those annoyances, but for some non-tech-savvy people, they just want a machine that works all the time, and they don't want to carry any external hard drive with them. Like my family members or friends, I don't think them carrying around an external hard drive is practical. Here's an example that you guys can let me know down in the comments below whether it's good or bad. I'm not a car guy, I'm just gonna preface that. But there's nothing wrong with buying upgrades on a Toyota Camry instead of just buying a base Toyota Avalon, which I think is the next model up. Some people don't need the higher horsepower because they don't slam on the accelerator. They don't need the precision of the turning of the wheels. They aren't going to use all the features that come with the next model up because the base model with some upgrades is good enough for them. Probably even has more features than the base model, not in this instance, which is why you see a lot more upgraded Camrys than a base Avalon, which is why you see more people buy base chips that's upgraded than just the base Pro chip. So the next time you see someone with a non-Pro chip with upgraded RAM and storage, don't ask them why they didn't get the Pro model. Ask yourself, would they even use the power that comes with the Pro chip? Or are the upgrades that they bought better for their use case? And trust me, I'm not being an Apple white knight here. I'm not trying to protect Apple. Like I said, those $200 upgrades on storage is egregious, but there's no real competitor to Apple. I mean, yes, you can argue Windows laptops are, but macOS is something that's really just housed within Apple and there's no one else. So they can kind of dictate the market. It sucks, I know. Microsoft is doing it themselves on the Windows side. Let's yell at them too. Before I end this video, I know someone is going to mention the future-proofing aspect, and I put future-proofing in air quotes because this is a very touchy topic between, I would say, practical people versus people who just want the best, just to say that they have the best, without actually realizing that the next 5 years, they're probably not even going to actually use what they bought, which is a bad value for your money. Buy what you need now, not what you need in the future, unless it's something that is actually going to impact, I'd say, the essential things in your life. Water, food, shelter, things like that. So, people who talk about future-proofing, I respect it, I understand it. It's just not practical in real-world use cases. Now, the argument that I understand when it comes to future-proofing is, well, you won't use the processing power today, but you might want that processing power in the future as applications become more taxing and require more resources. But my counter argument is if majority of the work you're doing today is on the browser and a lot more applications are being offloaded to servers, you're just logging in, doing stuff, and the processing gets done in the background. And chips themselves, I would say, are probably at their height in terms of performance versus efficiency, performance per efficiency. You know what I'm trying to say. I really just don't see the point unless you want to build stuff locally on your machine, which at that point, I would say your company or research institution needs to be providing you a laptop that can handle that stuff, and it needs to come out of their expense. Or if you have a side business, that machine can be paid by the profits that you make. And if you're working for a company, just, convince them to give you the best machine that they can afford. But other than that, I'd say technically the last group of people are enthusiasts, who are people who are just curious about building stuff themselves, and they don't want to have stuff being ran on the server. They want everything to be done locally on their machine, which is completely fine. Typically, those groups of people have, disposable income, or, that's their hobby. They enjoy spending money on things that they are enthusiastic about. So for those people, those three groups of people, Either you work for a company, a research institution, you have your own side business, or you're an enthusiast. That's when I would say that that logic for the future proofing, I guess that makes sense because you're probably already doing stuff that requires you to have a pro chip or above. But for 99 seems a bit excessive. I'd say 98% of people probably just need a base model chip with upgraded specs. They don't need to just go up since the price is the same because they're not going to use this. And if anything, this is probably going to be a worse value for them in the long run. Just saying. I'll wrap this video up by saying if you are hesitant on whether you should remove that upgraded M4 14-inch from your cart and get the base M4 Pro 14-inch, don't. Because they're both good laptops in their own right, but they also have two very different target audiences, and everyone has different wants and needs. And if you are a tech enthusiast, please keep this in mind. You should not have your wants influence what others actually need on their day-to-day workflow. Just because this is a better machine that's probably better for you doesn't need your mom or your friend needs the same exact machine. They just need this with upgraded specs and they'll be fine. With that being said, the machine that I would go for, and the only reason I would go for this Pro machine, is because of those extra video encoders and decoders that Apple provides on the Pro chips and above. It just gives me back more of my time and I can do more stuff in real life. So if I can get my videos to render faster for my YouTube channel, which, you know, is the side business that I have and can pay for this machine, I would rather just pony up for the M4 Pro, get my time back, and I'll be happy. But if you don't need that stuff, if you're just doing this as like a side hobby for fun, this is the machine that I would recommend. So appreciate every single sub, like, and comment. Hopefully you guys understand where I'm coming from as a regular consumer. Share this video if you found it informative. And as always, guys, much love. Space Black is clean. I don't know which ones I'm for. I think this is the Pro. This is the base. I'm going to talk about performance I do want to mention that you probably have heard of this, but this is more of a reminder because I think this is really a reminder that a lot of people need to hear. Now the ports are something that might look similar. While Thunderbolt 5 is fun. While the $1,600 model comes with the $1,600 model, the $1,600